Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Ecoffee with Experts. I'm your host, Matt Fraser. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Taylor Kurtz. Taylor is a professional SEO and business professor. He was born and raised in Tampa, Florida, or relocated to Tallahassee to attend Florida State University, where he obtained his bachelor's degree in sport management. He has an employment background with law firms that he used to seamlessly integrate attorney search engine optimization into his marketing strategy. In 2018, he launched his own digital marketing agency, Crush the Rankings, and he currently resides in Fort Collins, Colorado, where he continues to build the Crush the Rankings client base. Taylor, thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. That sounded great.
All right, on. So Taylor, have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur?
No, really,
No?
it was kind of I kind of got gifted the opportunity. Like you said, my major was sport management, and my passion is sports. So that was kind of the industry I was planning on going on.
Okay.
But like you said, also I was working in law firms, and at the time, I guess my boss, who was obviously the owner of the law firm, had been paying an SEO company, and I, at this time, this is like 2015, had never heard of SEO, and apparently, which leads kind of in today's discussion, his domain got blacklisted by Google. And I didn't know anything about any of this. I was just told, okay, he's not on Google anymore. And one day he dropped a book, like a literal, I just packed it up recently, but a literal book the size of a Bible about SEO on my lap. And I'd ask him, what does SEO mean? And he explained search engine optimization. He said, I want you to learn this. I don't trust these fellows anymore. And that's kind of what I did. And I just dove head first. And he gave me the resources to go to conferences and kind of network with some people who really enabled me to learn the right way to do things and things of that nature. And and then I just kind of saw the avenue after doing his SEO and helping him rebound from all that. I just kind of saw the avenue of, like, maybe I don't want to do sport management or, my initial goal, which was to be like a sports agent. And so that was, like I said, it had never crossed my mind to be an entrepreneur until that kind of made its way into my life.
Well, that's pretty neat. So what motivated you to start Crush the Rankings and make that switch?
Kind of just what I was talking about. I had been working in a typical employer situation really my whole life, and never really gave much thought to being my own boss. Obviously, it seems like a very daunting task when you first consider it. And so I don't know, I just working at that law firm, and I said I saw an avenue, and I said, well, let's run with it. And so that was really the motivator.
Are there any challenges you've had to overcome to get your agency up and running?
Lots of challenges, man. Like initially, I'm very, very blessed right now. We're kind of I can be a little more, you would say, like, selective about clients, perhaps. Like, I care much. Of course, you need to be able to, your checks need to clear. But at the end of the day, I really focus on the relationships. Like, I want to have the same clients for 5 years. I'm not trying to constantly be acquiring clients. And so I totally lost my train of thought.
No, you can be, so you can be very needy
about,
or you can be very, challenges, but you can also, you're talking about selecting clients.
But initially, like I said, or you said, I focus solely on SEO right now. We build websites and do web design to an extent, but exclusively SEO for the most part. But back then, man, I'll take any work just because I had to get my name out there. I had to kind of build my resume. So I'm getting texts at 2 a.m. about a social media post with a typo, and those are really kind of petty challenges. But at the same time, I just building my work ethic to the degree it needed to be a sufficient self-starter and get a company off the ground was really, I would say, the biggest challenge. Not that I didn't have a good work ethic, but work ethic's not the right word, the routine. I would say the routine has been critical to me overcoming challenges because it kind of keeps my days consistent.
Okay. So when you learned, you said you learned SEO from books and going to conferences and things like that. Did you have a mentor or anything like that?
I did. Phenomenal opportunity. I had a woman, her name is Mindy Weinstein. She learned and used to work probably a decade plus ago under a guy named Bruce Clay. But I saw her speaking. Right. I saw her speaking at a conference, and what caught my attention was she spoke about she got her start doing content or something in a law firm, like not for law firms, in a law firm. And at that time,
Yeah.
I was at that conference on behalf of a law firm. So I very
Wow.
much kind of saw, like, as I mentioned earlier, I saw this avenue, but I wasn't really
Yeah.
sure how to navigate it. And I saw someone in front of me who had already done so. And so, well, I don't want to say I latched on to Mindy, but like the other speakers didn't exist to me at that point. Like I
Uh,
kind of saw this was a connection I needed to make, and I did. And she was very receptive to me, and that's really how I got in the speaking circuit, as a matter of fact, was she was
oh.
speaking, like I said, at various conferences. That's how I saw her. And
Mhm.
I just kind of realized, like, I admired her from a distance so much that I was like, okay, I want to be on the stage. I want to do all this stuff. And so
Yeah.
I one time reached out to her and said, I'll pay my own way. I'll do all this if you just let me hold your laser pointer at these conferences, like anything.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and she let me do it, and she would let me like help people when they had questions, and then she introduced me to the people that ran the conferences, and it just
Oh,
kind of evolved from there. But she was so selfless in it all, and like I would 100% not be here without her. Plus, as I mentioned, my first ever SEO project was my boss's domain getting blacklisted, and she
yeah.
was kind of hired to consult on that. So she really
Oh,
held my hand through my first major SEO project, and we've remained in contact ever since.
oh, wow. So would you recommend, like, that's a pretty amazing story to have someone of that caliber of SEO mentor you. So do you think
Yeah.
what would you recommend to other people who are wanting to learn about SEO? How to go about it? Attend conferences, read books, take courses?
Not read books, not take courses so much. I would
Okay.
say read articles, blogs. Like
Articles.
there are
Mm.
certain ones I'll give certain shout outs, like search engine roundtable
Yeah.
is one I check numerous times a day. Search engine
Uh-huh.
land, who I've recently become a writer for. I'm
Oh,
just
right on.
edit.com to the end of all these. And search engine journal. Those are like the three that I check on a
Yeah.
daily basis, and they really enabled me to learn, because you can go and take a course, but if that course was made in 2020 or even 2021, things have changed. And these
Yeah.
blogs are made daily. Like that's how you really learn what's current and what you need to know at this moment. And the second biggest benefit I ever had, and I would recommend to anybody, in my case, it was the attorney's website, but have a guinea pig. Like, even if you just make a website where you're like, I just want to try and rank for these specific terms that aren't too
Mhm.
competitive, like a trial and error thing. Now, to have the trust to work on a website where he said, if you mess it up, just tell me you messed it up. And
Yeah.
thank God I didn't mess it up. But I mean, to me, experience is the best way to learn. So get a guinea pig
Okay.
website, whether you can do that for
Can,
your
yeah.
employer or just a side project.
Yeah. Maybe a side project, or even or even creating a website that's based on a hobby and seeing what you can do with
Yeah,
it.
anything. Yeah, passion, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the practical experience is the best teacher, eh?
Yeah, you got to go through the trials and tribulations
Yeah.
sometimes
So
through the
you
fire.
mentioned that the website got blacklisted. So obviously it was under a penalty.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
About
In
that scenario?
generalities, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I mentioned, my boss at the time was an attorney, and his website was first name, last name.com. And
Mm.
so, getting blacklisted from a pride standpoint, that was very frustrating, because he's like, this is my name, you know?
Yeah.
And so he was very
That's
frustrated with that. But
wow.
more so, he was one of, especially in his market where he did criminal defense law, he was really the first to take SEO seriously and put it in his marketing budget and all that in
Yeah.
like the late 2000s, probably like 2007, 8. And so
Oh,
he
okay.
ranked number one for about everything in the area. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden one day, he's not on Google at all. And
Oh,
like I said,
wow.
was so unfamiliar with, I didn't know anything about SEO. I didn't know anything about
Yeah.
Google, how it worked. I was a mindless user. And so, yeah, it turned, and we never really got a clear answer from the company. And that was why while the
Oh.
most frustrating part, that was the biggest blessing to me, because that was why he let him go. Was, like he told me, if you did something
Oh,
wrong,
you
tell
never
me you did something wrong.
okay, so
And
you
they
never
just
got an
kind of wouldn't
answer.
explain it.
Oh, okay. You never got
Yeah.
an
And
answer
they would
from the
just kind
SEO.
of,
Of course they wouldn't want to explain it.
no, they just deflected and deflected. And so Mindy came in, and I'm in my, tutelage, you could say. And we quickly found out, like, essentially what had happened was there was a ton, like thousands of spammy links pointing towards this website. And Google had sent like notifications through the search console and such about manual penalties and things like that. Like, you were under a penalty, and they went completely ignored, which to this day, that company's never acknowledged or anything like that, which thank you. You know, you handed me a career, which I'm super, super grateful for. Through unusual circumstances, I suppose. But that was the source of it, was just like sketchy link building, I suppose, and not even responding or acknowledging penalty warnings and getting blacklisted altogether.
So they were getting
where their domain, I don't think their domain could come back today. Like, it's gone for good.
That law firm's name, his first name,
right,
last
right.
name.
And like I said, the first project was now it's lastnamelawfirm.com, and we migrated the whole website, and they're back. They're significantly better than ever, but still, like, I would imagine losing your name as a website's a bummer.
Can you tell me, was it ever discovered what it was? Like, it was just spammy links, or was it because of a Panda update, or I'm thinking back 2008. I don't know what that was back then.
Well, the blacklisting happened in 2000. Sorry, the blacklist happened in 2016.
Yeah.
So it had been a while. So he'd been working with this company for like 7-8 years. But I guess they were either, like I said, we got no explanation. So they were either probably doing one of two things. They were either doing like sketchy things to build backlinks, or else bots, or however it goes, had built sketchy backlinks back to them that they never disavowed or in any kind of way acknowledged. But it happened for such a long period of time that they had thousands of these links, like the online Cialis pharmacies, like really. This is clearly spam. Like, this is clearly spam and nothing of use. And it just, Google warned them, like, we're seeing all these things. It never got acknowledged. So that was really the source of the penalty.
So they were building irrelevant links that had no editorial value.
Most likely. Yeah, most likely. Or else, like I said, they were just ignoring nonsense links, like I mentioned.
So is it possible to recover from a Google manual penalty? Like, I know their site was blacklisted, but is it possible? So it is possible. Because you seem to be, from what I've read online, that's one of your main things you're known for, if I could say.
I appreciate it.
Go bold as to say that. Is the only way to identify a manual penalty a notification in Google Search Console?
No, I mean, if you stop getting visits to your website and things of that nature, you'll probably catch on pretty quick if it happens. It's not a subtle change by any means. And especially when you have certain, I mean, for instance, when you have certain industries, and this is how this came about. Not necessarily, it wasn't my boss at that time. There's other attorneys in the firm, but attorneys specifically, I found, are very prideful people, and they like to Google their own name sometimes. And for them to find all of a sudden that I'm not there can raise some red flags. So things such as that, or you know, if you're an e-commerce store and sales just plummet, things of that nature, like very alarming business direction shifting changes. Typically, like, you lose the bulk of your internet traffic as a result. So that would be the number one red flag to me. But if you're on top of Search Console, they typically will in some way notify you as well.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, from my experience, you could set up Google alerts for drastic changes in traffic. Like, if the traffic drops more than 50%, send an alert, or if the rankings drop, or something like that. So make sure you keep on top of that. This is
the price I want to buy at, or I need to sell at. So when it hits that, let me know, things like that. But it's definitely a scary time if that were to happen to a company.
So if a business owner comes to you, or someone comes, a business owner comes to you and they've been, think they've been hit with a penalty, what's your process for identifying and then recovering, taking them through a recovery process of recovering from a Google penalty?
Yeah, so the first thing I do is confirm that it's actually a penalty, because a lot of different things, like typically if someone reaches out to me, their number one red flag is my traffic is gone, or something of that nature. And so as a result, that's the biggest, as I mentioned, red flag. So typically I want to confirm it's just a penalty, because it could be just an enormous algorithm penalty update, and you're getting crushed by it because something's out of line. For instance, today, Google announced the May 22 core update, which is the first major announced core update by Google this year. And so some websites are going to suffer, some will benefit, and there may be no reasoning at all to it sometimes. But at the same time, that doesn't mean just because your traffic dropped, it's a penalty. So I always like to go in, have you gotten any notifications from Google? Like, let's look at the number one tool I really like to utilize is the Search Console, Google Search Console. That will really tell you kind of what's going on. But as far as they'll never tell you, Google, if you get a penalty of any kind, they'll never tell you, here's the reason for it specifically. Typically, like you typically get a manual penalty, you're alerted to a manual penalty. Sometimes there might be like slightly more details, like, but it's never going to tell you fix this and we'll bring
the details. They're wow.
Right. Never. Never.
So wow. So Taylor, then how do you figure out what to fix?
Well, so for instance, when my first exposure to SEO, as I mentioned, was that blacklisting. So I learned, okay, one thing that they'll do this for is those link practices. And then I just kind of, like I said, I read blogs. One of my two like big things to learn. I read the blogs and I started looking up blogs about like what causes these penalties, things like this. And so it kind of gave me an idea of like, here's the most common issues, you know, if, for instance, same thing as a car. Like, here's the most common cause of this. So we're going to check that off the list first. And probably like 8 times out of 10, when I go through a site that believes they've been penalized or have been penalized, it's pretty clear what's going on. Like, it is really usually pretty clear. Either they, like my previous employer, had an SEO company that was using kind of black hat or sketchy tactics, things of that nature. Exactly. Or it could be something like, you know, your website's been neglected for however many years. Google now cares about things like core vitals, and when the last time you touched your website, those didn't exist. Things like, so your website just might not be up to compliance with the mobile standards, all these different all these things that are changing by the day. So when you kind of have an idea, you know, similar to a doctor, okay, you've got a cough, let's start checking off what it could or could not be. We go through that, and a lot of times, like I said, probably like close to 80%, it's something that's pretty clear and hopefully easy to clean. The other times there's sometimes a lot of digging involved, but typically we can get to the cause of it. And unfortunately, like I said, Google is not even in the slightest going to hold your hand in the process. So you're going to, you just got to try and address what the problem is, fix what the problem is. And then it's basically a waiting game. You know, is Google going to bring us back or not? There's no submission, no acknowledgement that we fixed it, anything like that.
Oh, wow. So there's no way to notify them or tell them or inform them. Holy smokes.
Not really.
How long have you seen it take? The shortest amount of time and the longest amount of time for a website to recover after you've done some of the things that need to be done?
The shortest amount of time was probably like 5-6 days.
Okay.
Because at the same time, like, Google has like I would imagine they have some sort of crawl budget, but they don't crawl every page of your website every day. So if something is wrong with your website, they're not going to notice if you change it at noon at 1 p.m. that it's been changed. So it may not even get picked up until the next time it gets crawled, which could be tomorrow, could be 2 months from now. And so, and there's certain things you can do to kind of like add it to the queue, encourage it to get crawled and notice these changes, things like that. But from that standpoint,
some of those things, you can go resubmitting your XML
submit
sitemap?
it to Search Console. Well, submitting the sitemap, trying to submit a URL that may have been a problem to Search Console, so they'll re-index it or reevaluate it or like add it back to the queue. Excuse me. But yeah, that's really the shortest amount of time, just under a week, I would say, and the longest amount of time is a couple months. And typically, like, it's hard because you don't want to like overcorrect. You know what I mean? So for instance, if someone has a problem and you think it's this and you fix this and it's not back tomorrow or the next day or the next day, it's stressful because the client is stressed out, which that translates to my stress. Like, I want all my clients to be pleased with what's going on.
Of course.
But at the same time, we're at the whims of Google in this scenario. So that can be a big challenge in itself, I would say, for sure.
Yeah. So okay, so you said, I mean, 5 days is, sure, that could be a huge loss in sales, even just 5 days, but how long did you say? 2 months, 5
It's
months?
I'd say the longest I've seen was close to like 60 days. And like I mentioned, after the first week or two, you're kind of like, well, was it not the changes I made? So now you're looking
Ah,
at other things, and that's where you can
oh,
get into the problem of like, no, you fixed it. It maybe hasn't been crawled again. And now you're trying to correct things that weren't a problem,
yeah.
and you're
How do you
overcorrecting to that
differentiate
extent.
that? How do you avoid how do you avoid not doing that?
It's a thin line. Like, as I mentioned before, there's black hat practices which kind of lead to these penalties. And my
Yeah,
boss was the one who taught me those terms. He said, like, always do everything white hat, always do everything white hat, which of
yeah,
course I did, especially when you have clients, paying clients. Like, I'm not going to ever play games like that company did or anything with people's
yeah.
URLs, things like that. Uh, but yeah, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Sorry, my apologies. I was saying, like, how do you talked about how you can start to second guess yourself about what you did
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah.
right, and whether or not, there's other things that you maybe and there's a fine line between, like, wondering if you could do more, or there's other things that you should do. And how do you, like, you know, keep yourself sane and balanced in regards to, okay, I did do what's right, and you wait 3 days, and then, okay, maybe we should try this, or like,
Yeah,
there's got to
especially when
be
the
a
client's
process
emailing you every hour
absolutely,
about it.
yeah.
But it's kind of one of those things where you learn best practices, and you kind of, like I said,
Okay.
like, oh, bring me back. You learn how to do everything white hat, and you stay on the top of these blogs. So, as of today, what is it, May 26th or 7th? 25th.
25th.
Yeah, sorry. But May
It's fine.
25th, like, this is as of today what Google expects, whether it's as far as mobile speed, whether it's as far as content, whether as far as internal linking, whatever it may be. So you
Yeah.
kind of just have to, like, it's very much like a sport, like sports, where you just kind of have to, hope this play works, kind of like, but you
Ah,
trust it because you've done it so many times in practice. Whereas here,
yeah.
like, this is the best way to go about each of these facets of the website. So
Okay.
if I were to go beyond this, like, at that point you're overdoing it.
Yeah.
At that point it may come back, and then you get in trouble again for that extra stuff you did. Not in trouble to the
Okay.
point of penalty, but you may fall in the rankings for, oh my gosh, is this keyword not in there enough? And you start stuffing
Yeah.
it in, things like that. So
Okay.
it is a fine line, but it's really just trusting your foundation, I would say, your knowledge
And your
base.
experience. Is
Right.
there so, for instance, I mean, if I was down, if how come they replace that traffic? So for instance, do you ever recommend Google Ads to replace the traffic? I mean, yes, it costs money, but so does SEO. And if you can get a return on investment and return on ad spend, and gain that traffic back through paid ads, is that something you've ever suggested to a client, or a
So
strategy you've seen them implement?
I'm very, very
Good.
grateful that while people have come to me, like,
Yeah.
post penalty, I also
Hmm.
work with a lot of clients, like I said, in ongoing relationships. And I don't
Yeah.
want, I pray I don't jinx it, so knock on wood, but I've never had an existing client suffer a penalty. And
Okay.
so typically, when these people come to me, they're very, very, very concerned, I would say.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's a very much a matter of, like, kind of balancing the psychology. And do I ever, coming back to the ads that you mentioned, like,
Yeah.
that's a very interesting subject for me, because at the end of the day, I don't want this client to lose money. So I may
Yeah.
suggest to them, like, hey, maybe supplant this in the meantime. But at the same time, like, I'm the kind of person where if you're paying for my services, I try to make it a point to never suggest additional money expenses. Like, I'm not here to say, hey, I think you should, like, sometimes I'll maybe say, like, hey, you should probably, like, sign up for this specific thing. It would have great benefit to you. But I'm never
Hmm.
here to, like, oh, here's the problem. Your solution is more money. Like, I really try
Yeah.
to avoid that, because when I first got in on that blacklisting situation, like, even as someone so new to it, that was such a turn off that, like, man, you screwed this up, and your suggestion is we pay you more. Like, that was so mind
Yeah.
blowing to me. And so when it comes to ads, like, it really depends on your industry. Like, because
Mhm.
the problem with me with ads is it's like a water faucet. Like if your money runs out, the ads turn off.
Yeah,
Whereas
absolutely.
if you invest in SEO, outside of a penalty or whatever it may be, you may have worked with me for 2 years, some dynamic changes in our relationship or your ability to pay, whatever it may be, and we no longer work together. My work doesn't just go away. Like you should
Yeah.
still be in the rankings tomorrow and the next
Yeah.
day and for some time. So I think SEO has the best ROI. So with a clear conscience, if there's never a penalty involved, it's hard for me to push a bunch of money into ads because it eats up that budget so quickly. But as far as post recovery, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Like whether that's ramping up an email campaign or getting more aggressive on social, like you just lost 70% of your traffic. So in the meantime, like, wouldn't it be better to get 40-50% of your revenue versus 10%?
Yeah.
If you can kind of leverage that through ads, social, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. Have you seen any a common thread or common mistakes that SEOs have made besides building toxic links and other things you've made, like just common mistakes?
The top one would be a big one that everyone, even like real deal professionals, a big mistake that people make. It's just like I said, not reading those blogs. Like even people who are real deal involved in this industry, speak at conferences, like very well respected, they have other things going on in their lives and they may not be on such a micro scale, keeping on top of what's going on a daily basis, where that's really, really a big deal, I think. But beyond that, the biggest problem I've ever seen with SEO, and it's probably the most common as well, is just snake oil salesmen. People that they'll pump through clients like this and they don't care if they get 1 check from you or 10 checks. Like a check is a check. And like I said, for me, I don't want to be churning out clients. Like I want to build that rapport, that relationship, the same, we're on the same path, things like that. And so it's like typically when people come to me for SEO, it's not coming out of a positive situation. And so I try to go above and beyond with my transparency, my communication, letting you know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, why I'm doing it. I said to myself when I started this company, based on that blacklist experience and their inability to kind of answer is what they've been doing, is I never wanted to be asked the question, where's my money going? And so I'm real on top of communication, but at the end of the day, like a lot of people are coming from negative experiences. So I think that people telling you like, oh, I can get you the top of Google rankings in a week or whatever it may be. Like there's a lot of people where you jump on websites and you're like, I see what they were trying to do, and this is a mess.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask you. What are some of, for anyone watching this wondering, what are those snake oil tactics that he's mentioned? What are they?
Yeah.
Or some of the common...
you mentioned the link building, but also just, keyword stuffing, scraping content like from other websites.
Scraping content. Okay. Yeah.
Just typically it's like shortcuts, not doing things the right way, going for these companies or whoever it may be, individuals that do things this way. When it comes to clients, they want quantity over quality. And so they want the quickest turnaround. They may be using AI software to rewrite other people's content and charging you hundreds of dollars for it, whatever it may be. But they're doing they're clearly doing sketchy things because they're just trying to create revenue. And for me, like I said, it's quality over quantity. It's the exact opposite. So, but I think that's really what it is. And also just taking shortcuts, like that sums it up. Taking shortcuts.
Yeah.
Taking shortcuts.
I saw one company provide inflated keyword search volume based on related keyword search terms that had no commercial intent, and telling the business owner, you're going to get all this traffic, and what's the point? It was so crazy. And selling him on the idea that he was going to get so many leads and so much traffic. It's like, but those aren't there's no search intent, like the search intent, commercial search intent behind those words. And it was crazy.
It's not a relevant audience.
Yeah, no, it wasn't at all. So what is your favorite part about being an SEO consultant and doing SEO? Very passionate about it. So
I am. I'm really into it. Yeah. The thing about it is, for me, is like I said, just early on, I was through working in that law firm, I saw the avenue. And
Yeah.
like, I'm so grateful for what the avenue has afforded me. Like, I had to put in the legwork and make the
Mm-hmm.
efforts. But long story short, as I mentioned, sport management is my background. Sports is my passion. I am a very competitive person.
Yeah.
So when I got brought on by that lawyer to fix the SEO situation with no background, I was super in, because I'm a very loyal person. I was very loyal to him. But
Ah,
I
okay.
saw, like, so the goal of this is to get to number one. Like, I saw it as a competition.
Ah, okay.
And so it kind of like, I'm unfortunately, due to whatever reasons, not a professional athlete at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in general, like, I kind of saw it as the same thing. Like, here's an opportunity for me to have like daily competition in my life, even if it's like self-perceived. Like, the people
Mhm.
that rank number one and I'm at number three trying to get to one, they don't know that Taylor Kurtz exists.
No, they don't.
But I hate that guy. I
Yeah.
don't know that guy,
You're
but
trying to take them
I
out.
want to beat him. And so yeah, I'm very, very, very competitive. So to me, that's the best part, is it has afforded me the ability to kind of be flexible and work for myself, but also just like
Yeah.
fed that competitive streak to where it's something that, like, even if I don't feel like doing it, I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
So I'll do it.
That's pretty good. And pretty
Yeah.
good motivator. Is it
It's
also
great. Yeah.
the constant, the ever changing, you're always learning. That's what I'm trying to say. You enjoy that, the fact that you always have to be learning on a
Yeah. It's
daily
not
basis about,
stagnant.
yeah, it's not stagnant.
Right. Bag. I like, I like learning about it because, as I mentioned, a lot of people don't. So a lot of times
Hmm.
I can
Hmm.
kind of set myself apart. Like, for instance, today, I know this algorithm update was announced 3 hours ago or whatever it was. Like,
Yeah.
I'm on a micro level very aware of what's going on. That's
So
kind of neat.
how do you stay up to date on when an algorithm? Is it just from the daily reading you're talking about, or do you have another way of keeping up to date with Google's algorithm changes?
Yeah, so I mentioned those three particular blogs, which I do check, but I would
Yeah.
say my number one news source, even though it's typically the authors from those blogs, is Twitter. Like,
Oh, okay.
because that's very up to date.
Oh,
If
okay.
I'm seeing something unusual, I can tweet about it or tag certain people like, "Hey man, what are you seeing? Hey,
Yeah.
excuse me, like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing something
Yeah.
similar? Like, this is kind of strange to me." And
Yeah.
so, like, for instance, we have, I mean, the whole SEO community, I say we've
Mhm.
been like tweeting kind of about like, this is unusual for about a week or two now. Like, there's certain things that are going on, like this volatility doesn't necessarily add up, and it seems like there's an algorithm update or something going on, and then Google announces this huge update today. And so I
Yeah.
would say that's like the big, I like the changing landscape a lot,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'd like to like just rest for a little bit. Like, I don't need Google to be doing something every day.
Yeah,
Like,
I hear you.
golly, they don't care if it's Saturday, they don't care if it's Sunday, they don't care if it's Wednesday. Like,
No, they don't, do they?
there's some months where it's just constantly they're doing something, like this month being one of them, where the volatility is so extreme that,
Mm.
I mean, the moment I'm up, I'm at my computer seeing what's going on.
Mm. So what are your favorite SEO tools to use, Taylor? To track
As I
rankings
mentioned,
and
Search Console. Yeah, well,
yeah.
Search Console is my favorite for kind of like analyzing traffic
Yeah.
and things like that. Google Analytics is great too, but I personally feel that I get a lot of insight from Search Console. Outside of that, analyzing rankings and such, I've used SEMrush for a long time. Um, and I'll be frank, you know, I started using SEMrush long before my company Crushed Rankings existed, and I've used it through, and I've been researching other options lately.
Oh, yeah.
Like, which is a shame, because I'm actually like, I bought a few shares of the SEMrush stock. Here I am myself thinking about leaving it, so that's not encouraging. But
Yeah.
either way, um, they do a great
Which
job, and I have no
mhm.
complaints about their existing products. But
Mhm.
with SEMrush, which I would say my two top tools that I use are SEMrush and Search Console.
Yeah.
But my only complaint with them is they've been expanding their offering quite a bit, which
Mhm.
is great, but I don't use any of this additional stuff. So I
Yeah.
would much rather some of that energy went towards improving like
The
the keyword
existing.
research tool, like these really core elements that you built your company on. And
Yeah.
so that's a bit of an extended answer. Long story short,
That's okay.
SEMrush and Search Console.
Yeah.
Those are the
SEMrush
top
and
two
Search
for me right
Console.
now.
Yeah. Hey, what's the one takeaway you'd like people to, our listeners to take away from this interview?
It's just stay hungry. Like
Okay.
if you, and it doesn't, and that's on so many levels. Stay hungry in your career. If you're self-employed, stay hungry with your drive to keep building your business. Or if you're even working on one website and it's ranking at #1, stay hungry because someone else wants that #1 spot usually too.
Yeah.
Like it's so easy, whether it's through self-employment, being an entrepreneur, being an SEO, or even working in-house for a company as SEO. It's so easy to feel like the job is done, I can rest.
Yeah.
Which granted, some days will be amply easier than other days. But that doesn't mean just like don't go over your normal checklist, don't go over your normal standard operating procedures, things like that. Like, yeah, things may be #1, but you know, people
But
are
don't
coming
get,
after you. There's always room for improvement. Don't
yeah.
rest on your laurels per se.
Don't
And
rest
that's
on your
really
laurels,
like the
stay
biggest
hungry.
takeaway I would say is like stay up to date. If you're really serious about it, like stay up to date, you know, and just stay hungry as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as an SEO, all the above.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, where can people find out more about you online?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter. It's at real Taylor Kurtz.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I would love, you know, that's just like my boss. I would love to have at first name, last name, but someone claimed the account in 2010 and never tweeted. Not one tweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
same with me.
no
He claimed it in 2007 and he's never tweeted. I've
Unbelievable.
even reached out to him and sent him DMs and asking him, you know, hey, what gives?
Twitter should have a policy, like almost like the statute of limitations. Like if you're inactive for 8 years, it's free game.
Yeah, he's been inactive for over 11 years.
He's been, if it's 07, almost 15 years.
07,
But anyway,
it's
crazy. Which makes me feel old. But yeah, that's really it. But you can reach me at real Taylor Kurtz or just email me like taylor@crushtherankings.com. Like crush the rankings, plural.
Crush the rankings.
I mean, I'm like, I'm real into it. Like I said, I'm very competitive. I want to stay on top of my game always. So even if it's just a question, like I don't bill people for questions, things like this. Like, I mean, if you start sending me paragraphs and we're gonna have all these extraneous things, but if you just have like a simple, hey, I saw you on this call with like, you know, I had a question about this or anything like that. Like I genuinely want to help people. And like I said, I try to put that emphasis on transparency. And a big portion of like what my business is like, I want to educate the client as well. Because some of them don't care. Some of them don't want to hear it. Just I pay my invoice, tell me that things are up. But other ones, it's like the more you understand about what I'm doing, the more value it has. And so, you know, it's not just some background activity. And so that to me is a big one too. Like I want to help people, especially if you've been misled by other companies. Like considering that's how I got my start, I just hate that like treachery, as I consider it.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
No bueno.
I hear you. Well, hey, I just want to thank you very much for being on the show, and it's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate it too, man. It's been an honor.
Right on. Thanks very much.